Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream I do a couple of times a week where we talk about job search. We talk about careers. We talk about the hidden job market, the posted job market, job interviews, job applications, the negotiation of offers, networking, the whole shebang, the whole enchilada. And this is your big chance to ask me questions. That's the number one reason why we do this. It's a live Q&A. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you can get in the chat and ask me questions, and I will do my best to answer them and help you out. That's the whole point. Hopefully you guys are enjoying my fantastic hairdo today. I did this for you guys. I anticipated, all my fans. That's right. And I knew they wouldn't want to be disappointed, so I had to rise to the occasion, and that's why I did this. Yes, the title of this live stream today, this is episode 141 of Honest HR Nitrous, and the title of this is Tell Me About Yourself, How to Answer. So we're going to kick things off by answering that. This is the most common job interview question, and the one that people seem to be the most curious about. It's also one of the stupidest job interview questions, too. It's the most general thing they could possibly ask. So we are going to get into that. But first, just a very brief shout out to my YouTube channel members and my Patreons. You guys are awesome. Also, my super thanks donors. Those are really nice to get. And a special thank you to my viewers and participants. You guys are awesome. Okay, let's do this. So tell me about yourself. That's usually the icebreaker question when you go to a job interview. And, they usually ask this to kick things off right after they've done the greeting and said hello, and maybe they shake your hand or do like the elbow bump or the chest bump or, whatever the protocol is in your industry when you greet people. But then they say, so tell me about yourself, right? And everybody hates this question because you think like, what the hell am I supposed to say? What are you wanting to hear? Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, probably the easiest way to do this, just give you the answer, what I recommend. Okay, here's what I recommend when they say, tell me about yourself. Here's what you should do. The first thing out of your mouth is the following phrase, okay? That there's three parts to this. This is the first part. And you say, as you can see from my resume, right? Then the second thing you do is you summarize your resume in 45 seconds. You start with your education, you then move on to your experience, starting with the oldest experience, and then coming up gradually to the present. Okay, and then that's part 2 of 3, and then you end with the following phrase. You say, and that's what brings me here today, and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. Okay, that's my recommended answer. So once again, you start by saying, well, as you can see from my resume, and then you summarize your resume in 45 seconds, education first, then experience, oldest to newest, and then you end with, and that's what brings me here today and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, that first phrase, it's optional. Okay, it does depend how you say it. If you do say it in a very condescending way, it can come across the wrong way. But it's more of a memory jog for you than it is for like an answer for them. The important thing is that you summarize your resume and then you go from the past to the present, and then you say, and that's what brings me here and why I'm interested in this job. Okay, there's a bunch of things that are happening here. Let's unpack them. First of all, why the hell would you give them a summary of your resume? Well, 2 reasons. Number one, the material on your resume is safe. You see, the problem is at this point, you don't know who these people are. You don't know what they're looking for. You don't know what biases they might have, what hangups they might have, and you don't want to say the wrong thing that sounds perfectly innocuous to you, but it turns out that's what got you eliminated, right? So it's very hard to know what's the right thing to say here. So you start with material that you know is safe. What happened was you sent in your resume, and based on your resume and maybe some other things, they gave you an interview. So the material on your resume, assuming they read it, is safe. It hasn't got you eliminated. So that's a great fallback thing. When you don't know what to say, you fall back to your resume. The second reason is because it's a logical place to start. In a perfect world, recruiters and other interviewers would have revised your application immediately before the interview. So when you show up in the room, they know who you are, and they know, oh, you're the person that had this in their application and that, and this is why we wanted to talk to you, right? In a perfect world, they would have done this. Unfortunately, in the real world, more often than not, what happens is they've had job interviews lined up back to back, and usually they run over, and there's no time between interviews to really bone up on the next candidate that they're about to talk to. So often, when you walk into the room, they haven't had a chance to revise your application or your resume or anything since they originally looked at it possibly weeks ago. So when you start by just giving them a very brief summary of your resume, that's usually a logical starting point. It can quickly get people up to speed so they think like, okay, I remember who you are. Okay, perfect, yes. And you've got some good stuff on there. Now let's get into it, right? So it's a very logical thing to start out with. Okay, they can't disqualify you for this. The reason why you want to avoid saying random personal things, because those can get you eliminated. You have no idea what the hidden elimination criteria is. They could be looking for a very specific thing. You say something that seems pretty harmless, but you're actually giving away that you're not that person, and then they eliminate you. So to avoid falling into any of those traps, you stick to your safe content from your resume. The goal in the interview is to communicate your value, okay? And the way you do that, the way you start off, is you first speak to what they said in the job posting. They usually gave a list of requirements, and they said, we're looking for someone with this. So usually it's a great thing to start with, certainly, is to say, well, I have this and this and this and this, all the things that you said you were looking for, right? So we can, it seems like I'm a fit, and it seems like it's, logical that I'm here, right? Okay. You want to do this in 45 seconds because are you at the job interview to talk all about what previous jobs you've had? No, you're not. You have one purpose in a job interview, and that is to communicate to them why you're the best person that's the best match for this role. So that means you have to start talking about this role. You have to get off the topic of what you did in the past with other employers, and you need to start talking about this job, right? What are they looking for now, right? What you did with someone else years ago is irrelevant, okay? What are they looking for here now? Let me tell you about how I meet that and how I can deliver on that, okay? That's what your job is in the job interview. So we don't want this question to drag on for 10 minutes. That's why I say summarize your resume in 45 seconds. I started here, I worked in this, here's my job title. Then I moved here, I worked there for 2 years. Here was my job title. Here's my big accomplishment. And that's what brings me here, right? What else is there to this? As you go through your resume, it might make sense, it's up to you, to highlight things you've done that directly tie into the job requirements for this job. So if you know what the job requirements are for this, which you should, as you go down your resume, if there are certain things that you really want to pull out that are a great example of like how you have what they said they were looking for, you can always highlight that. That's something you have the option of doing if you wish. Okay? And even if they already know your resume, which they may, not always, most of the time they won't, but even if they already know your resume, give this answer anyway, because this is a logical place to start. The most pertinent things about you that make you qualified for this role are on your resume. So that's the logical place to start. In an introductory question, we start off with the resume and then we move outward from there. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's the way I recommend that you answer this question. I'd like to open it up to questions now. If you guys have anything else you're wondering about or struggling with, let me know, and I will do my best to help you out. There are 7 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Get in the chat. Let me know what you're struggling with and what you're wondering about. Usually this question, like a lot of the standard job interview questions, there's about 10 standard job interview questions. Tell me about yourself is usually the first one of the 10. The last one of the 10 is at the very end of the interview. The stereotypical last question is, do you have any questions for us? Right? That's the question they usually ask right at the end. And that question is every bit a performance as all the other standard job interview questions, right? So these all have well-known reasons for them asking, and they have well-known things that you would say that tend to be good answers. Some of the other questions are things like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your salary expectations? They might include things like, what is your current salary? Stuff like that. They have the past question and the future question. So the past question is, why did you leave your last job? The future question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right? Like these are all the standard questions. They may even ask questions like, how do you handle stress? Right? Things like that. These are all the standard questions. And then you have those standard questions. And then the other thing you can expect is that they will ask you behavioral questions. Right? Behavioral questions are a little bit different. They're questions where you have to answer with a personal story. So they'll say, tell me about a time you did this, or give me an example of a time you did that, right? Or you had to deal with this. What did you do? Right? So your story, your answer is going to be different from anybody else's answer because you're describing a specific situation you were in. Those are behavioral questions. The reason they ask those is because they're making a logical inference. They're saying, if you were in that situation in the past and you handled it a certain way, what that's telling us is that if we were to put you in that same situation again, we can expect that you would handle it the same way that you did in the past. Past behavior predicts future behavior. That's what recruiters are taught. Now, there are exceptions to that, certainly. It's kind of a flimsy thing to just always assume that's true, but that's how they interpret your answer. So that's why they're asking you about the past. Anyway, I could go on, but the way these things work is I'd much rather get your questions. So I've been talking for nearly 14 minutes straight, so I'd like to open it up for questions. So if you're here, let me know what you're struggling with or wondering about, and I will do my best to answer that. And if I don't get any questions, I guess I will just call it a day, I suppose. Yeah, let me know. We got 4 people. I appreciate you guys being here. If you are, I'm also curious to see people's response to that, to what I just said, if there was any. Check out this course if you want to go deeper with me. All my advice in one place for how to get a job. This covers how to get a job in the posted job market and how to get a job in the hidden job market. They're 2 sides of the same coin, but they are completely different in terms of how you go about pursuing those. So check that out. There's a link in the description box under this live stream that links to that course. So if you're interested in learning all that stuff with me, check that out. And the other thing I wanted to do today is, I like to bring up ChatGPT as a tool online, not because I need it to find the answer or anything, but because I'm curious in what it says. And I also want to set an example for a lot of people out there that might have a lot of questions, but they really don't know where to start. ChatGPT is an excellent tool. There are many other chat bots and things out there. But ChatGPT especially is pretty useful. It's not the be all end all. It doesn't get everything right, far from it, but it can be an incredibly useful tool. So I would encourage you to check it out. The other reason why I bring it up live is because I want people to realize that the answer I'm giving or the advice I'm giving is not coming from me. It's not something I made up. This is an open secret. It's a well-known thing. So sometimes I get people questioning that, saying, you're just making that up. That's not true. And I say, no, it is true. Like, Lear, let's ask this as a very quick way to see if we can validate that. And sure enough, Okay, finally, the award for the first person in the chat goes to James. James says, I've been out of the interview process for years. Give me 3 good starting points. Thank you so much. Well, unfortunately, we don't get to choose the starting points. It really depends on what questions they ask us. So depending on what question you're interested in getting an answer for, those would be your starting points. And this is, of course, when we're dealing with the posted job market, right? 85% of jobs are not in the posted job market. They are in the hidden job market. That means they are not posted publicly. So you really do want to be looking in the hidden job market if you're trying to find a job right now. That's where most of the jobs are, and it's coincidentally where almost all of the good jobs are. So you need to check those out. Barringer says, why do companies frequently expect total control of an employee's time? Must be available to work any shift, for example. They do it because they can. If that arrangement doesn't suit you and doesn't work for you, then it's probably not a good fit for you, But there are people out there that are prepared to work under those conditions, and those are the people they're trying to connect with. So I can sympathize with your frustration. I mean, I remember jobs I've had in the past where you have to be on call. And I absolutely hated that. I hated the idea that, you go home at the end of the day and you've got to keep a cell phone on you and they can call you at any moment and you got to leave what you're doing and come back to work, and I felt it was dehumanizing. It was restrictive and it was an overstep. Unfortunately, the nature of some jobs is that that's what's necessary. Like if you're in a small company and you're providing, in my case, it was industrial services. So, you have technicians that go out and fix equipment on customer sites. And if that equipment breaks down or whatever, they need to be able to call someone and get someone to come out and immediately take a look at it as soon as possible. So, that's just the nature of some of those roles. And if you have a company where there's only like 10 people in the company, someone's got to do it. And, it's unfortunate. You try and compensate people for that and make sure that it makes sense. But some people are more amenable to doing that than others. Some people like me, I hated that, but that's not all jobs. So like when you're saying companies frequently expect total control, well, the other thing is that there are employment standards, there's labor laws, and you can look up the law in your area. And I'll do a ChatGPT thing in a moment that curbs that. They don't just have total control over you with no holds barred. There are laws that govern that stuff. Now the laws change depending where you are in the world, what country you're in, and what region of the country, right? But let's investigate. Okay, so I got a question. So when it comes to employment standards for where I am, I'm in Manitoba, Canada. Now, obviously, this is going to change depending on what region people are in. But if there's an employer that feels that it's reasonable of them to require you to wear a cell phone at all times and for you to be on call at all times, so that if they need you, they can call you on the cell phone. You have to pick up and you have to go into work, say, within an hour. Is that legal? Are there any standards or employment standards or labor laws that prevent that from being a condition of employment? And hello to Kyle Quinn, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Short answer, yes, it can be legal in Manitoba, but there's some important limits. Being on call is generally allowed. Okay. Employees generally not required to be paid. If you are called in, minimum pay rules apply. Yeah, they pay you for it. Employers control schedules quite broadly. Practical limitation, overtime, and rest periods. Standard hours are 8 hours per day, 40 hours per week. Now, this is where I am. You can, if you have a specific region you'd like me to look up, we can certainly do it live, or you could do this yourself. There are rest requirements between shifts. The big gray area. So, like, you can get this kind of stuff. Now, what you can also do is here, I'll do it for you. Can you provide a link to the appropriate law? I believe it's an act of some kind. I actually know what it is. I'm just telling it that to see if it can do it for me. So that you guys could do this if you need to do it. Here we go. Okay, yeah, and here we go. Here's the actual law. So what you can do is you can do a Control F, and you can say, so like on call maybe? Does that have anything? No. Let's see, call. This probably won't yield anything. But this is how you can look up what the law says. Like, for example, notice periods, anything like that. Yeah, it doesn't have that. Availability. Really? No, there's no, the word availability doesn't appear. Did I misspell it? Available. Okay, maintain records, determine amount is incomplete. Hours of work means the hours that you're available to work. Okay, so, you can get some guidance on these things. Anyway. Okay, Behringer says, I'm in Indiana, USA. Okay, so what if I was in Indiana, USA? Can you provide me a link to the appropriate law? And can you also revise your answer if that was my region? Okay, let's see what it says here. Legal framework is different. Oh, it's federal. Okay. Main law. So, okay, so here's the statute. So let's look at this. So, that's the Wikipedia page on it. Indiana does not have any state law, so it's federal law. Key legal rule. Whether on-call time counts as hours worked if you're required to remain at the workplace, blah, blah, blah. So, you can get into this. I'm not going to read the whole thing out on here, but I would like to see if we can. The link you provided is to like a Wikipedia page. Do you have the actual link to the actual law so that people can look it up and do like a Control F to see what the exact clause is that applies to them? We'll just see if this comes up. I'm not even showing my screen. Here we go. Okay, so let's see here. So here's the actual law. Okay. It does talk about breastfeeding, so that's a good start. Minimum wage, maximum hours, definitions, exemptions. It would be nice if it was all in one thing so you could do a Control F. But yeah, so anyway, you get the idea. There's the law. Here's like the synthesis of it. Okay, on-call time, it counts as this, blah, 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 blah. So you can get into that. You can like look up specific questions like this that you might have with different types of jobs if they're like asking you to be on call and all this kind of stuff, how it counts. Okay? But that's a good question. You know, the thing is, you know, employers are looking for very specific things. If there are people out there that are willing to do it, you know, then great. That's what they're going to do. It works the best for them. You know what I mean? But obviously, not everybody will be willing to do that. Kyle says, okay, so how is the best way to answer? Tell me about yourself if you've been out of work, life like long unemployment. Well, you do exactly the answer that I gave at the beginning of this live stream, and you don't have to deviate from that. Because what I would not do is advance the fact that you've been out of work for a while. I would wait for them to notice that if they do, and then ask you about it, and then you have a ready-made explanation ready to go that sort of frames it the way you want. And usually, for me personally, what I'd recommend for that is some version of saying, I went back to school. So let's be honest, you know, most people are out of work because they can't find jobs. Maybe they got laid off or something. Now, if you did get laid off, you can say that, especially if you got laid off with other people. That's even more evidence that there was nothing wrong with you, right? You know, and then maybe there's some transitional unemployment, you know, just a few months, right? But if you've been off years, like you say, you had a work gap of like 2.5 years or something, that's going to be more of a problem. The only way I would phrase that is to say, well, you know, most of that was essentially me going back to school. I wanted to update my skills. I took courses in this, and this. And now that, you know, I've done that and I'm ready to rejoin the workforce, that's what brings me here. Now, let's say that isn't strictly accurate, okay? What I would do is I'd go out right now and, I don't know, register for a couple of free courses. So it's not a lie to say that, oh, I went back to school and, I took courses. That's actually true. You're not kind of disclosing the whole timeline, but, what you're saying is not technically a lie. So, that's fine for me personally. Everybody can draw the line where they want, but I wouldn't judge you too harshly if you did that. The other thing is that when it comes to a work gap, you're faced with the problem that their whole issue with work gaps is based on bullshit. It's based on stereotype, and assumptions. You see, the thing is that what they're doing is they're saying a work gap is bad because statistically, people that have been out of work for a while, they have a higher likelihood of being out of work for a while for a reason. Something's wrong with them. They're not good employees. Nobody wants them. There's something, that's preventing them from being employed. Now, we're not going to actually investigate you and see if that's you or not. We're just going to make the assumption that that's you based on the fact that you've been out of work for a while, right? You see what they're doing? So it's a bullshit concern based on stereotypes. So personally for me, I wouldn't judge you too harshly if you countered that with, let's face it, some bullshit. You know what I mean? If they're going to use an imaginary thing and use it against you, something that you can't change, something that's of no fault of your own, and say, oh, this means that you're less desirable as an employee, and they're going to make a statement about your value, I don't consider it that unethical to counter it with, an exaggeration, where you technically did go back to school, but you're just not disclosing the timeline. That's how I would do it. That's what you're up against when it comes to this. So that's the reason I wouldn't volunteer that you've been out of work for a while. I would let them figure that out on their own if they do. And then if they ask you about it, you have a story. It's a nice benign story, checks out. And hopefully they move on. And if they do, you're good, and it doesn't come up. And that's good because it's crap anyway. The fact that you're out of work for 2 years, does that mean you can't do a job anymore? No, it doesn't. So anyway, that's my kind of position on it. But this is yet one of the things that you have to dance, one of the hoops you have to jump through and dance to when you're interviewing with recruiters, because recruiters are basing everything on risk, and they're assessing risk through assumptions, right? And unfortunately, that means some people are on the wrong side of that. So there you go. How's that for a laundry list of disdain for this process? But that's the reality of what's happening here. Anyway, that was basically from Kyle Quinn. We have 11 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Get in the chat. If you have been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to see the chat box and get in there and let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out if I possibly can. In the meantime, we talked about this course. Check that out. I also have this one here, Best Bang for the Buck Around if you want to learn business. For what it's worth, I have an MBA and I've been a CEO, so you could check that out if you're interested. But I think more people here will find this a bit more pertinent. This is if you want to tack on some high-level communication skills. It's useful in a variety of different ways. The most obvious way for people with career jobs who are working as a worker for an employer, this will help you be perceived as somebody who has potential to move upwards. So if that's your ambition and you want to foster that perception, tacking on communication skills is a great way to do it. Your technical skills are where a lot of your value derives from, but your soft skills are really what sells you. So check that out. All of these are linked in the description box below this live stream, right under the video feed, usually. So check those out. And I've also made a lot of videos describing the courses. Those are also linked below too. So in an effort to be as transparent as possible, they explain how the course works and what you get and all that kind of stuff. Okay, WW's here. It says, "Hi Bill, I'm trying out direct outreach for hidden jobs as advised by you. I've managed to get a few senior connections so far. Do you think this method varies by country? You suggest saying you're looking in the first message, but ChatGPT says to build a relationship first before asking for a job. E.g. in the UK, people prefer less direct and building a relationship first, blah, 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 blah." No, that's actually not correct. Look, see, the thing is, you can talk to anyone you want, right? And there isn't one way of talking to someone. If you've never done networking before, there's many different ways of doing it. So what I advise and what I have in my course is a way of doing direct outreach that I've done myself. And it's how I built a consulting business. So a lot of the people I reached out to ended up becoming my consulting clients, and I reached out exclusively to CEOs in my hometown. Really not many others, just CEOs. I didn't know them, they didn't know me, but I got informational interviews with these people, and it went from there. Now, informational interviews are a very common thing, okay? But also using direct outreach to send a template message, basically saying, "Hello, I'm here. I'm a fully qualified whatever. I specialize in this. If ever you're looking for someone to do that, please let me know. I'd love to work with you. Have yourself a great day." There's absolutely nothing wrong in doing that. I have gotten a lot of gig work, contract work, consulting work doing that. I know a lot of others have too. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I mean, there's a lot of details. That's the thing. You can't teach this stuff in like little 5-minute videos like you can how to answer job interview questions, because, you know, there's a lot of principles involved and they all stack on top of each other. And, you know, if you don't cross your T's and dot your I's just right, it'll backfire. It won't work. For example, what's the first thing that somebody's going to do on LinkedIn when you send them a message? Well, they're going to check out your profile, right? Now, if your profile picture is of you drunk, passed out on the floor, partying with a bunch of other people in the background, that's going to work against you. Like it's not that this message or this method doesn't work. It's just that one of the prerequisite conditions wasn't met, you know? So that's a principle. It's almost like, you know, submitting a resume, but you submitted it in crayon, you know? It's like, yes, technically you did everything right, but you used crayon instead of a pen or instead of printing it on a computer, you know? You know what I mean? Like, does anybody tell you that step? Don't use crayon. When you're doing stuff for the first time, you make a lot of these kind of mistakes. So that's why when I put this into a course, I like went through everything painstakingly to say, here's all the initial conditions, right? So now that you have all those correct, now you can go ahead and do this method and it should work. You know what I mean? So that's the problem. It's very hard to put into little bite-sized information packets. That's why I had to put it into a course to teach it properly. Okay. But I mean, listen, you know, instead of asking me, you're saying like, you know, you advise this, whereas ChatGPT says that, whereas other people have said that in Europe it doesn't work. It's like, go try it. You know what I'm saying? Like stop relying on advice at this point and see what works for you. Okay? Try both of those. And, you know, does one work better than the other for what you're doing? It may. You know, these things also vary slightly by industry and by country and by the level that you're at, you know. For example, if you're doing this with CEOs and executives, like I suggest, it's going to work one way. But I know that a lot of younger people that have never done this kind of thing, they shy away from that. They say like, oh no, I don't want to talk to the CEO. I'll talk to some supervisor somewhere. And it's like, it doesn't work, because the problem is that the supervisor it's not part of their job to check LinkedIn and represent the company to unsolicited queries on LinkedIn, you know? So anyway, what I would say is if you want to learn this is take the course. That's where I put all that stuff. I've given a few little videos here and there, you know, that show you pieces of it, but that's all I can do. You know, unless you want a 4-hour video, that's the only thing I can do. Kyle quit, and that UK thing is crap, by the way. I've heard that too. That doesn't work like that. You know, people the world over, there's slight cultural differences. If, you know, you go to Japan or Italy or Germany or, you know, but more or less it's the same principles. People network the same way the world over. You know, the protocol is sometimes a little bit different, you know, but the general principles are the same. And unless you do it, you don't know, you're just buying somebody's advice. You're parroting what somebody else has said. So try it. Kyle says, to add on to that, if I include like an in-between job on my resume, then I feel they would ask me why I'm not doing a job related to my college degree. Yeah, that's a thing. This is the problem when we're dealing with recruiters, because logic goes out the window and instead we're worried about how this might look. And the reason why it looks a certain way is because they're making assumptions about you. They're not actually getting to know you. You know, everything they do is like a heuristic. It's like an assumption based on what usually happens, right? You know, like, for example, they'll say, you know, like, oh, you've got a job. Therefore, Usually that means that, you are valuable and you have some real skills. So they go, okay, you've got a job, so you're valuable. It's like they just jump to that. Never mind like all the exceptions to that do exist, And every part of their thinking is like that, right? So the problem is that the further you deviate from the standard career path, the more you're going to be misjudged, That's the consequence of thinking like that. I used to teach recruiters in university. I mean, this is how I know this. I understand why they do it, because they're focused on efficiency. They want to get to know you without putting the time in to get to know you. So they make a ton of assumptions, and it makes it's really open to bias and, manipulation. Yeah. So listen, the general rule is like it's hard for me to say exactly because I only know one sentence of what your situation is. But generally speaking, you would not include temporary jobs, unrelated jobs that you had to take just to make ends meet, because they can confuse the picture of who you are and what you're qualified to do, right? But then, of course, the problem becomes, well, if you leave it off, then you have a gap. Then you have to have an explanation for the gap. My blanket explanation for work gaps is I went back to school. And usually they don't care about previous work gaps. They only care about current work gaps. So if it's a current work gap, which means that it's a gap right now, there's a gap between your last job and right now, then you can say, I've gone back to school and I've taken, several courses in these areas to update my skills, to learn new skills, to add them to my skill set so that I'm more valuable and I'm more capable as an employee. And now that I've done that, I'm ready to rejoin the workforce. You can do that because you can go out right now and register for some free courses so that it's not a lie. You can say I am in school and I have taken these courses. I am registered for those courses. You don't have to go into the nitty-gritty detail. You just say, that's what I've been doing. Now I'm ready to come back. Someone's having a good laugh. 588 is laughing their ass off and crying at the same time. Hopefully you're doing okay there, 588. Femi Williams, I remember that name. Femi Williams says, hi, Bill. I have an interview coming up for a mechanical design engineer role at a reputable defense company. Do you have any suggestions for questions I could ask hiring manager to help me stand out? Oh, that's a great question. So usually the last question they ask, like I said earlier, the last question they ask in a job interview is going to be some version of, do you have any questions for us, right? And that's a standard job interview question. And your answer is every bit as much of a performance as any other question they ask you, like what is your weakness, or tell me about yourself, Now, you can signal by what you say there in response to this question. They say, do you have any questions for us? And now you open your mouth and you either ask questions or you say, no, I have no questions. You're going to signal, something about yourself by what questions you choose to ask, right? For example, if you ask all about the benefits and the salary and the days off, that's a less desirable answer because that signals that you only care about yourself. You only care about what you're getting out of this. You're focused squarely on that. You're not thinking about the nature of the job. You're not thinking about, what type of work they do here. That's not on your radar. You're thinking, okay, I want to get money. I want to get time off, right? So the question becomes what are you signaling by asking different things, right? Well, if you just bear with me a second, what are they looking for? They're looking for an employee that is technically capable of doing the job. doing the job is not a big concern to them. They know what they're doing, right? They're looking for an employee that is motivated to do the job. They're excited about doing the job, right? They want to work here. They want to do this type of work. That's what they enjoy, right? And they're looking for someone who's going to fit in, not rock the boat, not create a bunch of disruption. They're gonna come in and they're gonna interoperate well and collaborate well with everybody, and the communication is gonna be good, and they're gonna get along, right? So how can you signal those three things? By asking, say, 3 strategic questions, right? Well, if you want to signal that, you can do the job well, and, doing the job is not much of a problem for you, you could ask a more technical question about the job. If it's a mechanical design engineer. I don't know the details of being a mechanical design engineer, but you could say like, well, when you guys do, for this role, do you tend to use this software tool or like that software tool? Because I'm familiar with both, but I'm just curious what you use. I find that this one works really well, but this is maybe a bit of an issue with it, but this one also solves that issue, but then it has this other thing, so like, all about that. And when they hear that, they go, oh, okay, well, you seem like the person that knows their stuff. It didn't seem like this is going to be a big problem for you, right? If you're trying to signal that you're someone who's going to come in and not rock the boat, you could ask a question of the nature of, in this work group that, the incumbent is going to be in, right? What's the preferred work style, among these people? What's the best, what's their preferred way of communicating, their preferred way of interoperating and collaborating? Do they do Zoom calls, or do they do everything in person, or is it all over email? Like this kind of thing, right? Because what you're signaling is you care about that, presumably because you want to come in and interoperate seamlessly with them and adopt this practice. So whatever they use, you're curious about that so that you could use it too, and then everything goes smoothly, right? So you're asking a question that signals something about you, and they get the impression, oh, okay, you're going to come in and you're going to make sure that there's no conflicts and there's no communication issues. That's really good to see. I got a good feeling about you. What was the third one? We talked about the technical skills. We talked about, not rocking the boat. Oh, the passion to do the job. Now let's see, what could you ask that signaled, you're passionate to do it? That's different from like showing your knowledge of how to do it. I'm not sure. Like, it's hard to do this off the top of my head, but something like that. We could ask ChatGPT that, I suppose. But these are some ideas of like what to ask. Because they're signaling good things about you. It's your last chance in the interview to make a good first impression and show that you're the person that they're looking for. Excuse me. So hopefully that makes sense to Femi Williams. Alexander says, my company gives me car and bonus at the end of the year, but my salary is 3 times less than in other companies. Should I look for another opportunity? That's unanswerable. That really depends on what your life goals are and what's right for you. I can't say. For some people, that would be a deal breaker. For others, it wouldn't. So I can't say. It's for you to work that out, whether you're happy in that role or not. Like, for example, maybe they pay you less money, but you're in a situation where you get along with your boss really well, you get along with your coworkers really well, the work itself is fun and interesting, there are opportunities for advancement, you get, good benefits or something. It's a well-known company, so when you put it on your resume, everybody knows, they recognize the name, that counts for something. So, there's other dimensions to this too, right? So what is most important to you, I can't say. But I encourage you to think about that stuff. Vijay Garv says, "Good evening, sir. Hope you're keeping well." Oh, I am keeping well. I'm the picture of health, and I'm not afraid of who knows that. Happened to be awake at an odd hour after a while due to some holidays and finally saw you live. Well, congratulations. This is what life is all about, Vijay Garv. You're living life to the fullest. And now that we're finally connected, this is your big moment to ask me anything that you can think of, anything you want to know. Which of life's mysteries would you like me to explain for you? Just pick one and let me know, and we can explore this together. It'll be fun. But I'm so glad that you feel that connecting with me live is like this thing that's like really awesome. So that's great. If I can help you out, I certainly will. Femi Williams says, "Thanks, Bill. I will do some more thinking around those 3 suggestions for questions to ask. I think I would also get them talking about themselves, maybe ask 5 questions max." Listen, while you're here, let's do this together, because I'm curious. I kind of didn't really deliver on what that 3rd question was. Okay, so let's see here. In a job interview, one of the standard job interview questions is, do you have any questions for us? It's usually the final question in the job interview. And I'm very conscious that depending on what questions you ask, you can signal different things about yourself. And my assumption is that they are looking for 3 fundamental things. They're looking for a candidate who can do the technical aspects of the job, and it's not an issue. They're also looking for a candidate that is passionate about doing the work and working in that environment. And thirdly, they're looking for a candidate that's going to come in and is going to interoperate seamlessly, is going to not have any disruptive effect, no communication issues, no conflicts. So if you're going to ask 3 questions, presumably you would ask 3 questions that each signal that you are one of these people, right? Now, specifically the question, what would you ask that could signal that you are passionate about the work, so that the impression they get when you ask this question is that you're someone who's passionate about doing this kind of work in this kind of place? What would that question be? How's that for a prompt? Now write that out 40 times. There we go. A nice big giant paragraph. Okay, let's see here. Less often. Okay, so signal is competence, passion or intrinsic interest, and professional maturity. Okay, best passion signaling question. What are the most interesting or challenging problems someone in this role gets to work on? Okay, that's not bad, but it's not amazing. What does a really great person in this role end up focusing on once they're fully up to speed? Well, once again, I don't know if that really does it. What part of the job tends to excite people who are really good at it? Okay, that might be a bit better. I didn't think your first 2 choices were particularly good. Surely there's got to be something better you could ask that would signal that you are passionate about doing this work. Maybe indirectly rather than directly. Only someone who's super interested in this role would be wondering about a very specific thing. What would that thing be? Okay. When someone in this role does an exceptional job, what does that usually look like? Okay, that's not bad. What part of this job... did that jump on me? When someone in this role does an exceptional... Okay, we already did that one. What part of this job do people who really enjoy it tend to get most absorbed in? No, I don't like that. That's like you're trying to bait them. What's the part of the job that people underestimate until they actually start doing it? Well, that just makes you sound like an amateur. So anyway, I mean, you can see these suggestions. If you maybe put more work into this, you could get it to engineer something that, really does signal that and purely that. But yeah, I encourage you to do this kind of thing yourself, and you can probably come up with something that killer. And then just memorize it, and then just always ask those questions, and that should really help you. It'll give like a final boost to your cause. Where are we here? Pneuma. You always need to say the P, of course. Says, "Hi, coach. What is this new trend in interviews? 5 to 6 rounds of 1 hour each. The position is field app specialist representative. And rejection 1 to 2 weeks later." I've never heard of that. You're going to do 5 to 6 rounds of 1 hour each. That's pretty damn labor intensive. If you're going to do that, you might as well just have the job on the hidden job market and not deal with any of this crap. I haven't heard that, but we can ask ChatGPT just because, let's see here. Okay, so is there a new trend in interviewing where you do 5 to 6 rounds of 1 hour each? And, maybe rejection is possibly 1 to 2 weeks later. Maybe it is a thing. Let's here. It's thinking, it's taking its sweet time. Okay, in fact, the hiring process of 5 or 6 rounds, about an hour each, has become fairly common in some industries. Okay, tech consulting. Multiple interview rounds have become increasingly common as employers try to evaluate. Well, they've always done multiple interview rounds. That's not a new thing. What a typical 5 to 6 round process looks like. Recruiter screening, hiring manager interview, technical or skill interview, team interview, cultural leader. God, that's exhausting. They got to do that with everybody? That's stupid. Companies often do this because they want input from multiple. Yeah, exactly. They don't trust anyone to pick the right person and to evaluate different aspects of the candidate. Why the process has gotten longer, risk aversion. Yeah. I got news for them. It's not going to solve the problem. More stakeholders. Large companies want everyone on the team to sign off. Cultural fit obsession. Many firms now specifically cultural fit or values. Yeah, it's the polar opposite incentives to diversity and DEI, right? It's like, we want diversity, yet we only want people that absolutely fit already, like this environment. So try and satisfy those at the same time. Let's see how well you do. When people don't meet candidates in person early, company compensate with more interview rounds. Competitive candidate pools. Yeah. Interesting, many things. Yeah, because it is. That's stupid. For like a worker level job, that's idiotic. One hiring poll found that 69% of responders think 3 to 4 interviews is already too many. For a worker job, absolutely. What that signals is that they don't trust their employees, and they have no confidence in their ability to pick the person. Usually what this is, now, not to be totally cynical, okay, but I have been around the block a few times. The reason why they do this kind of crap is because usually there's a political thing going on and they're wanting to distribute the decision. So what that means is that if they hire someone and that candidate doesn't work out, it's going to look bad for the person that hired them, right? They're going to be shown publicly to not have very good judgment when it comes to assessing people. They picked someone that didn't work out, right? So what you do is you involve so many people in the decision that it's no one person's responsibility. This is a well-known thing. And therefore, you can't point the finger at anyone if that person doesn't work out, right? But you can still take the credit if they do work out, right? It's beautiful. So usually that's what's going on. They say it's for some kind of productivity boost, blah, 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 but really it's just a smokescreen for the real political purpose. What they're doing for this. It's because people are afraid for their jobs. They don't want to be blamed for making a bad call. And so they come up with this kind of crap to justify it. That's also why people say that it's too many rounds, because it is, right? You shouldn't need to do this to figure out what candidate you're going to hire, you know? You see, what recruiters do is they don't actually get to know you, right? What they're doing is they're doing something far more efficient. They're spending very little time with candidates. They're making all their judgments based on assumptions and statistical probability. And then what that does is that allows them to spend only a fraction of the time recruiting you, and but yet get a pretty decent result, right? And there's a sweet spot in there. That's why they focus on risk and why they focus on, heuristics. So if you're going to do stuff like this with the 5 to 6 rounds interviews, now you're putting especially when all of those people are involved. You know how many man hours that is now? You're taking up everybody's time to do this, right? That's like 100 man hours now to just in interviews, right? So if you're going to spend 100 man hours, you might as well do what they do on the hidden job market, which is you actually get to know people. It's a little more cumbersome. It's a little more scattered, and there's less structure, but you're actually getting to know who that person really is. And then you make a much better call, right? So if you're putting in 100 man hours to do this, you might as well be doing the thing properly. There's no real advantage. So that's why I suspect this is politically motivated, and it's people covering their butt. That's what I would guess. Do I know that for a fact? No. But that would be my opinion based on looking at what this is. Femi Williams says, so far I'm thinking of asking immediate priorities. How do you see me getting up to speed in the first few weeks? That's not bad. That signals, you're interested. You want to do a good job. You want it to work. Thanks. I will surely use AI to help come up with some good questions and do further online research. Just see if you can get it to come up with like a killer question that signals passion for the role without it being a side effect of like some weird other thing that you're asking, because that was the problem with the examples it was giving me. Vijay Garv says, even my first internship offer ever required 5 rounds, even though it was clearly an entry-level role. Yeah, that's stupid. These are examples of companies that, first of all, I would wager that that's a large organization, right? That's large organization mentality, where they try to disempower people as much as possible, and then they have all the decisions bottleneck through people higher up. That's a standard way of operating. If it was a smaller company, you would talk to the boss once, maybe twice, and then you're either hired or you're gone. It's over, And they usually make pretty good calls too. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. You can actually learn something. I know most people here don't give a crap about business or learning business, but I was talking about this thing earlier, right? To learn business. And there's actually a topic that you take in an MBA or in business school. It's an area of study called organizational behavior. And it's interesting. It's like a little bit of psychology, a little bit of sociology, a little bit of business. And what it is it's studying how people behave in organizations, like in groups where they're working together, right? Very interesting topic. Like, they actually started working on this thousands of years ago in the context of like the military, because you need to organize people. You need to get everyone doing the same thing together, certainly in a military. And if you don't do that right, you could lose a war and all get massacred. So it was very important. So they've been working on this for a very long time. It's only in the last couple hundred years that they were studying this properly in the context of like a workplace. You know what I mean? But I'm sure everybody here can give an example of something that, like, on the surface it seems idiotic. Like, why people would behave this way. It's not immediately obvious why they would behave this way because it's stupid. But yet that's the behavior we see, And when you actually learn what's going on, like all the power politics and stuff like that, then things start to fall into place. It makes perfect sense, right? It's not about this thing that, it looks like it's about. It's actually about something else, that nobody's mentioning, right? That's why a lot of organizations, they say one thing and then they signal that that's not actually what they want. They'll tell you, oh, this is how we want you to behave. But then they signal through their actions that that's not actually the way we want you to behave. You're not getting rewarded for behaving like that. You're getting rewarded for behaving this other way. And if you notice, all the people that are like, climbing the ladder or whatever, they're not doing the thing that we told you to do. They're doing the opposite of it. But we can't say that out loud. So if you keep your eyes open, you see like, okay, you're saying that, but you're doing this, and you wonder like, okay, well, why is that happening? And it's for these reasons. So this is the kind of stuff that they study in organizational behavior. It's actually a very interesting topic. And it has every bit to do with like networking and this kind of stuff that we talk about here. So like, especially like some of these hiring decisions, a lot of them are political. And you just walk into this like politically charged situation where, one person wants to hire you, but another person really doesn't. And they've got like a feud going on and, you're a pawn in it. And that stuff happens. You just walk in. It might be a no-win situation. You just walk in. There's nothing you can do. It's not about you. There's other stuff going on under the hood. You just do your best and then you move on. That's all you can do. Vijay Garv says, also, thank you. I learned a lot as an undergraduate from your videos and polls. My question would be, is it okay to mention my experiences in my introduction? I won't be able to chat much as it's 2:30 a.m. Well, go back to the beginning of the live stream because this is called Tell Me About Yourself, How to Answer, right? And I answered that the first thing in this live stream. So I don't want to like rehash my answer again. But what you're going to be doing, the short version is you summarize your resume in about 45 seconds. And so you're going through your experience, starting with the oldest and coming up to the newest, right? So you are mentioning like the roles you've had. Depending on how much stuff you've got on your resume, it varies how much you can say about each one. It won't be very much. It'll be like just a line or two. But because you're doing an introduction, like here's who I am in a nutshell, right? So yes, you can mention it. And if there's something on your resume or a specific type of experience you've had that's very relevant to you getting this job, like maybe you've done this exact job before, you want to mention that, absolutely. And that's a great place to do it. As you're going through your resume, you say, yes, and I was in this role for 2 years. Here's my title. And it was very similar to this role right here. So I feel like, I've already covered this ground before. Numa84 says, yes, it was Thermo Fisher Scientific in Rush. Okay. That was the employer. Loahi says, hi, good evening from BC. You're one of those tree-hugging BC type people that we've all heard so much about. That's okay. We cater to all sorts here. How can I get a minimum wage job? I have been searching for 2 months and applying daily on Indeed. I have had a couple of interviews, but nothing seems to be working. Okay. In a nutshell, here's kind of how it works, okay? You have 2 places where there's jobs. One is called the posted job market. That's all the jobs that are posted publicly, that are advertised, right? And that includes like on the internet, in places like Indeed and LinkedIn, and on company websites, and also in the physical world. Like, someone might put a help wanted sign in the window or something, That's called the posted job market. There's also another place that has jobs. It's called the hidden job market. That means that the job exists and you can get it. It's just that they're not advertising it. And the reason they're not advertising it is because they don't have to, because they know a lot of people who know a lot of people. And usually someone they know will say, hey, I know who would be good for that. And then they recommend someone, right? Now, that's a lot more desirable than getting a stranger, like a total stranger off the street to do a job. Because here's a person that you've worked with for, let's say I'm the boss. Here's a person I've worked with for 10 years that I trust because we work very closely together. Here's someone telling me that, like, oh, this person would be good. You should check them out, right? Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to say, like, no, I'm going to try out a stranger before I take your suggestion. That's stupid. The thing is, they're putting their reputation on the line by recommending someone to me. If I check out that person is like a complete non-starter. They're incompetent, they're rude, it's like, I'm never going to trust this employee again, like they're risking their personal reputation. So that's why it carries weight. If this person I trust and I work with says, you should check them out, I'm going to do it, right? So something like 85% of jobs are not posted. They're actually in the hidden job market, okay? And that's why the hidden job market is so powerful, because you tend to get people that tend to work out better rather than just complete strangers, right? Now, the good news for you is that you can look in the hidden job market, and what that looks like is you don't look for jobs that are posted. Instead, you think of, like, where would I want to work? Maybe there's a place near where I live that employs people with my skills. That would be a good place to work, right? So instead of waiting until they have a job posted, they may never post a job, even though they're hiring. What you do is you send a message to the boss, or you go talk to the boss. You could do this in person. You could do this over the internet. And you say, hey, my name is whatever. My name is X. This is what I do. I specialize in this. And if ever you're looking for someone to join your team, let me know, because I live close by and I'd love to work for you. I know you guys do great work in this area. I think that's fantastic. I'd love to work for you. That's all. Have yourself a great day. Just keep my name in mind, and you blast that out. And the thing is, most places are not hiring at any given time, but some of them are, right? Like 5% or 1% or whatever are hiring right now. So if you send this out to 100 people, the odds are is that 1 or 5 of those are hiring right now. Okay? So there's many different ways to do it, but that's where the jobs are. Yes, there's some that are posted, but there's fierce competition around those. So you could do what you're doing, and that's fine, but I would recommend you try and supplement it by looking in this thing called the hidden job market. Learn all you can about it. Get on ChatGPT, go on the internet, learn about it, do your own research, and best of luck. If you have any specific questions, you can come back and we can talk about it. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Vijay Garv says, also, yes, it's really nice getting guidance and it being so accessible that too in a live session where I can ask you. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting some value out of this. That was my hope. That's why I do these. And I know I've helped some people in the past, so it's great that you're seeing it that way. So yeah, definitely we can get into whatever you want. We'll check the beginning of the stream. Thank you for pointing. Have a good day. Yeah, and you too. And get some sleep, my friend. If you don't get a good night's sleep, you're not going to be much use to yourself or anyone else. So you gotta pay the piper. 6808 says, scored 4 solid interview this week using many of your techniques, made adjustments on the fly, having the 4 to 6 panel, getting involved in the question. Thank you for advice, Carl. Well, that's great. Thank you for saying so. I'm glad things are working out for you, and it's very nice of you to come and tell me that. That's great. What worked is soft skill. What did not is star. What worked, getting them talking. What worked, strong closing questions. Yes, well, I mean, star only works for behavioral questions. It's the format that you say the answer in to a behavioral question. Behavioral questions are, tell me about a time you did this. Give me an example of a time you did that. Those are behavioral questions. They won't work for any other type of question. If they say, what is your weakness? And then you answer in the star format. Well, it was 2 years ago and I did this and my boss told me to do that and I totally screwed the dog and then I got fired. It's like, that's not how you answer that question, right? So, hopefully you're using it right. I'm just putting that out there. But yeah, so job interviews are about soft skills. They're about risk and soft skills. That's what they're about. They're not about your technical skills. That was the application phase. You met the technical requirements, so they gave you an interview. Now that you're in the interview, it's no longer about technical skills. Everybody they gave an interview meets the technical requirements. So now they got to decide between those candidates. So now it comes down to soft skills. Who would they prefer to work with? Anyway, we got 19 people here. Thank you for being here. If you haven't already had me talk your ear off about this, check out this course. Link in the description below. If you see what I'm saying. Link in the description box below. This is my course. It's all my advice in one place. How to get hired in the posted job market. How to get hired in the hidden job market. It is tailored to introverts. So if you are an introvert like myself, you will like this, especially the getting hired in the hidden job market part. It's less about going to events and, schmoozing with people and that. It's more about getting on social media and sending messages to people and stuff like that. So check it out. It's the method that I use to build a consulting business. Very popular course. So I have that. And if anyone here is interested, I also have this. This is for if you want to learn higher level communication skills. So everything I learned going from a supervisor to eventually a CEO in my career, everything I learned about communication skills, I put into this course. So if you are interested to tack on some high level communication skills, check out this course. The courses are all linked in the description box under this video, and I've made videos that describe the courses too, so you can see how it works and what you get, and I answer all the frequently asked questions about them. So check it out. I will probably be signing off soon, so if anyone has any last minute questions, there are 17 people here. Ask now or forever hold your peace. Also, I encourage people to check out tools like ChatGPT if you haven't done so already. There's a lot of people that are using these things, but there's still a lot of people that aren't. And, are they the be-all, end-all? No, but they're damn useful. They can do a lot of things for you. A main use for things like ChatGPT is the ability to customize your resume on the fly. That alone makes it something worth getting and worth doing. You could apply for, over 100 jobs in a day, posted jobs, and have a custom resume and a custom cover letter for each, if you know what you're doing. So if this is new to you and you've never done this and you don't see how that's possible, get on ChatGPT, start using it. You'll see, in this field, you can paste the entire job description, job posting. You can paste the text of the entire job posting. You say, here's the job I'm applying to. And you paste it in. It says, okay. And then you paste in your entire resume and you say, here's my resume. And it says, okay. And then you say, create a custom version of my resume that is specifically tailored to applying for that job. It uses the same lingo as the job posting. It accentuates the fact that I meet the specific requirements of that job. And it also specifically draws attention to the fact that I have the soft skills that someone in that role would need to be a great employee. Right? And it just, bam, does it. Here's a custom version of your resume. You proofread it, make sure it's okay, and then send it off. So if you've never done anything like that, you can see why some of these AI tools are pretty damn useful. You can do it manually, but you can't do 100 in a day. You could maybe do 3 in a day if you're doing it manually. Right? So anyway, check this stuff out. I mean, I have no stake in the game if you use it or not, but it's a very useful tool. And I will be back on Friday. I will be live on Friday. We have another one of these, Honest HR Nitrous. I think in the morning, and then in the afternoon, there's a live stream where we talk more business, like high level business stuff, as opposed to job search. So you can come back then if any of that interests you. Femi Williams says, in your view, what differentiates the engineers and teams at MBDA, I don't know what that is, who have the biggest long-term impact on capability development from those who simply develop the... what? Can someone in my position start aligning to that higher bar from day one? Hey, I can copy-paste. I don't have the patience to try and read that again. First of all, I don't know what MBDA is. My position start aligning to higher bar from day one. Okay. I don't even know if that's good grammar. I mean, you kind of lost me with the grammar. Okay, so here. I'm just doing this for fun. Let's just see this. So I've taken this question here, and I'm pasting it in here. Okay. Let's just see what this says. I'm curious to find out. Let's see. Excellent interview question. Signals several strong things. You care about long-term impact, just doing the tasks. How you'll contribute. However, if we analyze carefully, it's doing 2 things at once. Signaling ambition and professional maturity. Asking about what distinguishes high-impact contributors. That's strong intellectually, but it may signal ambition more than passion. Passion questions usually focus more on the work itself. So blah, blah, blah. Only one thing I might adjust from day one. I mean, I still don't know what MBDA is. What the hell is MBDA? Let's start with that. European Defense Company. That aligns my... Okay, no problem. I'm not in Europe, so that's why I didn't recognize that. Okay. Oh, it's associated with Airbus. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with Airbus. Cool. Okay, well, hopefully that makes sense. You got your answer. It seems like a smart thing to say. For me, that was a long question. That was like quite long. And, that to me, that's kind of a red flag. If your question runs on for 45 words, people's eyes start to glaze over. So that's the company you interviewed with. Sorry, I posted the question directly from AI due to post limit. That meant that is one of the unique questions that shows passion according to AI is a missile defense company. I would find a way of breaking that into 2 or 3 sentences, just so it's more manageable. People can parse it, Because the problem is when somebody says, like, in your view, what is the statistic that most accurately is used to describe the leverage effect between operations and marketing, while simultaneously it resists any kind of attempt to gain that metric when we look at the incentives that people might have to do that from a political perspective. It's like, do you know what the hell I'm talking about? It's like, it's too long. It's the sentence is too long. You would have to break that up into a couple of pieces and say, what would be the best metric to use for this? And also, it would be something that, it resists people gaming it. And it's adaptable so that whatever political inclination people have, they still can't game it. What would that be? Something like that. You would want to try and break it up a bit. And then people can wrap their head around what you're asking. If one AI was talking to the other AI, then I've no doubt that it would speak in sentences like that. Yeah, you're right. The question is too long. Yeah, well, it roasted me. I didn't make head nor tails of it when you asked it. Also, I'm a little bit frazzled right now, but the ChatGPT found it quite insightful. So that says something. Can you give a kiss on I guess keep it simple, stupid, on leading indicators? Use general industry. Just need to break this down to a short answer. Okay, what are we talking about? This isn't relation to anything previous, is it? Star. I don't understand the question. Leading indicators. I mean, you're asking what leading indicators are? Just need to break this down to a short answer. For what? Indicating what? What are we talking about? Are we talking dairy products manufacturing? Are we talking about the evaluation of which employees are more effective? What are we talking? Leading indicator, all it means is that it's an early indicator as opposed to a lagging indicator. For example, let's say you have a business and you want to know, are you going in the right direction? Are you going to grow or are you going to decline? Are you going to make more money or are you going to lose money? Well, an early indicator, a leading indicator would be something like customer satisfaction. Customers that are using your products now, they're saying great things about you this week. That tends to bode well. A lagging indicator would be your accounting. How much money did we make last quarter? Because, accounting it's reporting on how much money you made in the past, maybe 3 months ago. And it takes a while for customer satisfaction to turn into a change in sales, right? So that's why customer satisfaction can be a leading indicator, but sales is a lagging indicator, and accounting is an even further lagging indicator. Is that what you're asking about? For safety, well, all I know look, you're dumping all kinds of disciplines here, but I was a head of safety for a company. The leading indicators that we had were incident reports, things like that. When you have a whole bunch of little incidents, cuts and scrapes and trips and falls and things like that, then usually what you see is then you start getting big things. Somebody has to be hospitalized. They're severely injured, or you could even have fatalities. So what we found is that if you're paying attention to the little things and you're doing it in the right way, you're not just sweeping it under the rug, you're not just not reporting them, but you're actually taking care of all the little stuff, and you're really paying attention to safety, even when it comes to cuts and scrapes and things like this, then the big stuff tends to decline too. But the big stuff is the lagging indicator, the little stuff is the leading indicator in terms of incidents and things. So, there's other ways of looking at it too. How much money you put into safety is also a leading indicator. Things like that. How much training you do is a leading indicator. Whether you're doing safety audits and things like this, whether you're embracing industry-specific safety initiatives and programs, that kind of stuff. Those are all leading indicators. And then your major safety incidents and lost time and workers' compensation, all that stuff, that's all lagging indicators. So, I mean, I'm just trying to remember from when I did this like 15 years ago. But there you go. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but there you go. Okay, I'm going to sign off for today. Thanks to everybody who participated. You guys are awesome. I know that you never tire of hearing me talk in an endless stream, but all good things. So I will be back on Friday. You guys take care of yourself. If you're between jobs right now, remember, it's temporary. You're going to be fine. Trust me on this. Just do the right things. And if you have questions, come back and ask them. And we'll go from there. Thanks, everyone. You guys are awesome. Check out my courses. I'll see you soon. Take care.